smile, sit erect, live this moment. It's not going to come again, right? Savor it like I am savoring it now as a 60, whatever, it doesn't matter. I get confused. So what is left to say after what Rishabh said and after you, sir, had to say? But I'll share some very personal experiences about, we all want to get there, we all want to be that, but it starts from a certain level. So let me talk about those experiences from the ground zero level, right? I think these are important things to learn. As I told you before, maybe yesterday or maybe this morning again, I'm the grandchild of refugees. And when people ask me, how was your flight? Well, how was your hotel room? Wow. My grandmother came to India on a donkey. So no matter what you become, and I can promise you, these eager faces that I see from here, you all will be someone and somebody. But never let the perks of the job become bigger than the job itself. Never let this whole idea of flying business class and first class overtake the reason why you're going to whatever destination that you are going. It's just a couple of red flags I thought I'll wave in front of you and start with an origin story, my story. I was dyslexic and dyscalculic. Dyscalculic means numbers fly all over my head. I mean, I would never be able to associate with this fine man over here. But even today, numbers don't go into my head. OTPs, they give me shivers. I can't remember numbers. It's a learning disability. I don't even remember my room number. Never. I can never remember. Mohan will have to repeat my room number 48 times. And 48 is again the wrong number. It's the wrong, right. Sometimes I go to the wrong room on purpose, but we can't talk about that. The point I'm trying to make is, when I passed out of school, and it's a miracle that I passed out of school, you're allowed to laugh. I went out into the world to become a waiter. My grandmother, my refugee grandmother said, go ahead and do what you have to do. And this might sound a little, politically incorrect, but she said this in Gujarati, gali no mochi banje. I'll translate it for you. But gali no best mochi banje. You can be a cobbler, but be the best in whatever you do. So you want to be a waiter, be the best. I said, yeah. So I went to the best, Taj Mahal. And I went for an interview. And there was a very Khadus Parsi gentleman, Mr. Sam Bada, who did my interview. And this is the very reason why I'm telling you this story. Because all this is great, but when you go back, you have to come to reality eventually after the Cinderella story gets over, right? You have to go and start looking for a job or some kind of career and some kind of education. So I went with my bow tie and I walked into his office at the Taj Mahal. And I practiced with a baritone voice of what I'm going to say. So he looked up and he was busy with some papers. He looked up at me and said, which department do you want to join? So I, food and beverage. Style mein bola jara. He said, idiot. The whole hotel business is about food and beverage. The styles of gul ho gaya. And I said, okay. Sorry, the Rendezvous restaurant. Now the Rendezvous restaurant was the most expensive restaurant in Asia. There was no price on the menu. You could have guessed, right? And it was on the rooftop of the Taj Mahal, the rooftop restaurant, the only French restaurant in Mumbai. The Rendezvous. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? And he turned around and told me, excellent. You want something. And my caution to you is, if you want nothing, you don't have a story to tell. Remember that. You must want something. And your life will be a series of mini wants, and will get to a place where you want your big cosmic want. But that was my want of that moment. And he said, I'm very impressed with you. Of course, there was no hashtag in those days, so today let's call it #want. And he says, I'm very impressed, young man. Go to the basement, you idiot. So I was supposed to go to the rooftop. What happened? He's saying, you think you can get there on day one? And I said, he's absolutely right. So my friends, there's another red flag. There are no silver bullets. There are no magic bullets. And the basement was room service. Room service. I said, you've got to start at room service and work your way up all the way to the top floor, to the rooftop restaurant, the rendezvous. It's not going to happen that easily, young man. But you have a want, which is excellent. The first day at room service, I didn't even get to carry a tray. I didn't even get to carry a plate. I got to wash them. And I spent the first week washing. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it. So I wanted to tell you this story. It's a very, very important story that you will have to work your way up. There are no shortcuts. You've got to pay your dues. You got that, right? Everybody's nodding. That's good. Many years later, I became a shopkeeper. My mother was running the shop. I'm born posthumously. Posthumously means after the death of. So my father passed away in 59 December, and father passed away in May 59. See, I get confused every time there's a number coming along. And I was born in the December of 59. Don't calculate, 64 years. I know that much. So I did not have the experience of having a father. My mother more than made up for it. But she had an accident and I had to go and sit at the wafer shop. We had a little dukan. We had dukandar, right? And I used to fry wafers. I used to sometimes carry sacks of potatoes on my shoulders. I'm standing here with my fancy shoes on this fancy carpet and think back my grandfather and my days at the wafer shop, right? And I can see the entire journey. You have to pay your dues. Just come and talk to you young, fine people too. Now, I needed to make some money. And I was a pretty good photographer, a sports photographer. So to make extra cash, I used to go to schools and take photographs of sports day, cricket, football, what have you, cycle races. And they were some magnificent, if I might say so myself. I'm very humble, you know that. Right. You'll laugh at that? No, took some wonderful photographs. But I needed to do more. I wanted to upgrade myself. Right? So the World Cup of Boxing was coming to Mumbai. And I said, I want to be the official photographer of the World Cup. So I went and met the president of the Indian Olympic Boxing Committee, Mr. Aspi Adajania, another Parsi, another Kharus. And I went and showed him my photographs, and he was very impressed. He looked at every photo, oh, wonderful, 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 piled them together, gave them back to me and said, we don't need a photographer. I said, oh, this is because we get them free. And so I started walking out and said, come back. I said, okay, he liked. He's going to give me the job as official photographer of the World Cup, and my want would be complete. Right? And then he started to ask me a series of questions that baffled me completely. First of all, he said, you're that wafer wala, no? I said, that sounded racist, didn't it? I said, yes. And then he asked me a question that I can't for the life of me understand what that conversation was doing in that meeting. And he said, where do you get your potatoes? Yeah, exactly. Where do you get your potatoes? I'm trying to sell my photographs and become the official photographer of the World Cup. That's an Olympic event, by the way. Olympians are going to come for this event. I said, where do you get your potatoes? I said, the onion and potato market, I said. I said, oh, very good, very good. What do you know about potatoes? And this is getting more and more bizarre. So I said, I'm always up for a fight, right? I said, I know everything about potatoes. He said, like what? I said, I can pick up a potato and stick my finger into it and tell you after how many days you'll get the best wafers and how much moisture is in there without using. And I can scrape off the mud and feel it, and the whole spiel that I gave him. I can tell you which region it came from. This is from Vatti, this is from Talegaon, this is from Belgaum, this is from Hassan. He says, you're a PhD in potatoes. I said, yeah. He said, very impressive, very impressive. All right. What else do you get at the market? I said, onions. And I said, what the heck? He's trying to humiliate me. I said, onions. What do you know about onion? I said, nothing. Nothing. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. He picked up my photographs again. And he went through them. And I think all these photographs are like your potatoes. Think of it. Think of where he's going. I think some of you may have guessed where he's going with this, but let me give you the punchline myself. I like it. He looked at the pictures and said, you know about high jump, long jump, cricket, football, cycling, motorcycling, and you're very good. But you don't have a single photograph of boxing. So you could be an expert in anything in the world, but if you're not an expert at the job that you're looking for, then you have to pay your dues. You have to start from the basement and work your way all the way to the top. And I know this, I'm taking another 5 to 7 minutes, I hope you don't mind. But he was right. And in everything that I do, I always say, no matter what I do, every time I take a role, I have to pay my dues. If it's a new character, I don't know the character. I don't know the character. I have to start from scratch. And there's a phrase in English that says you should know your onions. How strange is that? You should know your onions. Remember that. When I wanted to write for a film, I didn't write because I did 100 films and I've been around for 20, 25 years as an actor. I have to start from scratch, from the basement, washing plates, all the way working yourself up to the rendezvous. When I wanted to direct, I had to start from scratch. I did not assume that I know direction because I've acted in a few films and read a few books. You should know your onions. And I went out there, and believe me, it took me 7 long days to take photographs of a boxing tournament that was being held in Mumbai, a very local tournament with a ring with one little light on top of it, And I say to myself, how am I going to take international looking pictures with these thin boxers and one light? I said, how am I going to prove to Mr. Aspi Adajania that I can take international looking pictures? So I was about to walk out of that room. I said, but this is my resource. I'm not going to turn my back on my resource. I'm going to use a cliched line. God gives you lemons, make the best lemonade possible. I'm sorry. So that was my lemonade, my lemon. I went and I took pictures from every single angle, and I used that single light to create drama, to create contrast, to create light, to create shadow. So never feel and never ever make an excuse of where you come from, your financial background, the people your parents know. And it's an amazing little thing that Rishabh said a little earlier about his grandfather. Make best with what you have. Make best with what you have. I took pictures and I went back to him, to Mr. Adajania. I showed him those pictures. They turned out pretty good and dramatic. I showed them to them and he looked at them. And actually he didn't even look at them. He just put them in the drawer and just shut the drawer. I said, what's going on? What's going on? But he took out another envelope and he presented that envelope to me. And I opened the envelope and said, "You have been appointed official photographer of the World Cup of Boxing." I said, "But you haven't even seen the pictures." You know what he said? "I didn't have to. Saw it in your eyes." That's all I needed to know. I know you're a good photographer, but I wanted to make sure you didn't back off and say, "What's this guy talking to me about?" I was prepared to know my new set of onions. So when you go out there, remember, pay your dues, and people recognize passion. Even if you don't know much, they still acknowledge the fire in your belly. They can see it. They can see it from a mile. You can ask these people who've done billions worth of business. But ask them, they know it. They can see it. They can smell it. They can see passion. You can see passion in this man's eyes. And I'll close this little piece of advice with something that Rishabh spoke about right now, about Kashvi, right? My whole life has got to do with the movies. My whole understanding of humanity has got to do with movies. I saw the world through movies. I understand history. I can understand whatever happened on these worlds only because of the movies. And the story that Rishabh brought us up to about 2 months before the event, it was scrubbed, right? You remember that moment? And we all sat up in our chairs and, oh my God, what the hell's going to happen now? You know what that moment is called in a screenplay? It comes at the end of act. There are 3 acts in a screenplay. I'm going to keep this short. Act 1 is the setup. Act 2 is the conflict. And Act 3 is the resolution or redemption. Okay? We'll talk about this some other day. But at the end of Act 2, there is a moment that is called the all is lost moment. All right? Remember this. All is lost. And you will. And do not think it's the worst thing in the world. I bless you with all is lost moments. Paradoxical as it may sound. You know why? Because it's only when you have an all is lost moment will you rise like a phoenix from the ashes. Kashvi wouldn't have been the Kashvi on the screen today had she not had an all is lost moment. Right? And it is only those who can rise that can have a third act and complete that journey. The ones who roll over and die, everything is lost for them in any case. So remember, when you have an all is lost moment, remember just this, that if you have it within you, you will stand up and become a Kashvi. Yeah? I feel extremely proud and privileged to be standing here today. I never ever thought as a little kid who, on the report card, a lot of red in the report card. You don't even know what that means, especially in the maths department and the science department. And I'll be standing here in this hallowed room. But what is even more special, and I wouldn't want you to be offended with what I'm saying, I'm talking to people who I believe in here in this room, because this makes it special. We could have done it, as he said, at the DoubleTree by Hilton or the Marriott, or maybe even Roti Chai or Chai Roti around the corner, if you notice that place. It happens here because we will absorb it and absorb these wonderful words that these fine gentlemen and sir will share with you, and will remain written in the inside of your eyelids for the rest of your lives. God bless you all. Thank you very much.